Alright guys, today we're going to work on our Chapter 8 review. Now since obviously I'm not going to spend all this time doing all 20 problems because this video cannot be this long, I'm going to do certain problems that you guys had trouble with in class today. So we're going to go ahead and do those. We're going to start off with number 2, which as you can see it says which of the following values of D makes the relation, and it gives us our relation, a function. So the first thing we need to understand is that anytime we're dealing when it asks us if something is a function and it's not a graph, we should make our circle chart, okay, where we put all the domains right here and all the ranges right there. Okay, so right now our domains from the example are 5, 3, 1, and D, which I'm going to leave blank right here because D could be any one of these 4 answers. Now, remember that domains are the x values in the coordinates. Ranges are all the y values. So, as far as the ranges, it's 0 is the first one. 1 is the second one. 1 is also the third one, so we don't write it again. We actually leave it up there because we already have it there. And 4 is the last one. Now, what we want to do is we want to make sure we connect them all. The rule is that every domain should have one line coming out of it. Doesn't matter where it goes, but as long as it has one line, it is a function. If one domain goes to 2 different numbers, then it is not a function. Because what this is saying, and let's start off with the first one, that is 5, 0. So 5 is connected with 0. Now what this is telling us is whatever equation this function is linked to, something happens to 5 and it turns to 0. So most likely whatever happens is it either is subtracted by 5 or multiplied by 0. Now, the reason it can't have 2 coming out and going to a different one is that you can't do the same thing to 5, like 5 minus 5 or 5 times 0 to equal 0, and you can't do the same thing to equal 1 as well. So that's why that is not a function. However, let's go ahead and finish this up and we'll see if this is a function. So 3 is connected to 1. 1 is also connected to 1. Now they're both connected to the same one, that's fine as long as 1 doesn't have 2 coming out this way. And last we have D, which is connected to 4. So we're looking for something that is that is going to connect to 4 right here, and it's not going to be doubled. So let's start with C. C is 5, and 5 is already on here. So you notice if I connect 5 with 4, now you have 5, something happens to 5 and it equals 0, but if that same thing happens equals 4, I don't think so. So that's why it's not correct this way. So 5 is not our answer. C is not our answer. 3 is also on here, and it already has an answer, which is 1. So it cannot have a different answer, which is 4. So it's not B either. Negative 1 is not on here, though. So let's try it out. Now, negative 1 goes to 4. Now, do all these domains have one line coming out of them? Yes. Remember, it doesn't matter where they're going. So the correct answer here is A. All right, problem 3 says the table shows the percent of households of a given income that have computers. Determine whether this relationship is a function and describe the relationship between the household income and the percent of those households that have computers. So then it gives us down to this little chart. So as you can see, the chart has the incomes, and the incomes you can see are getting bigger. You don't have any of the same incomes. The incomes are going to be our domains. Okay, the percent with the computers are down here, and those are also getting progressively bigger, and none of those are the same, so it looks like this is a function. So, because none of the domains repeat and they don't go to different ranges, that means we have a function, like we did in the last problem. So, that means we can cross answer C and D out because those start with not a function. A and B are functions, so that is your one of those is your answer. So, let's go ahead and do this one. A says function, as income rises, the number of computers in each household increases. All right, so as income rises, does the number of computers in each household rise? It looks that way if you don't pay very close attention. But if you notice, it doesn't say right here, it doesn't say number of computers in household. It says percent with computers, which is percent of households with computers. So that's not really right. Let's read B and see if that sounds more like it. Functions as function, that is a function, as income rises, which it is, the percent of homes with computers increases. And that's pretty much what that is saying. The percent with computers, and it is increasing, so the correct answer here is B. It's very important because A and B are very similar, but remember, the A is telling you that the computer number of computers in each household is increasing. Nowhere on here does it say the number of computers is increasing. It's talking about the percent of houses with computers. That is why B is our answer. All right, we're on number 4 now. It says, which of the following is not a solution of 4x plus 3y equals 6? Now, this one's a pretty easy problem. The thing you have to realize that you can't do here is you can't solve for x, you can't solve for y, because you have two variables that you don't know that are different and you don't know what they are. So the only way you can solve for a variable is when you have one by itself. Here we have two, so we can't really solve for it. But it gives us our 4 possible answers. So what we have to do here is we have to plug in those 4 possible answers in here as the x and the y. So let's start with with letter A. If A is correct, then whatever this equals should equal to 6. So for A, x is negative 3. And y is 6. So 4 times negative 3 is 12 plus, actually it's negative 12, excuse me. And 3 times 6 is 18. So 18 minus 12 is 6. So 6 equals 6. Does that match up? Yes. Now, so you might think, hey, A is my answer, right? Because it matches up. Please be really careful the way you read these questions. Let's read it again. Which of the following is not a solution? So it's looking for the one that isn't a solution. A is a solution, so that is not our answer. So let's go ahead and start all over with a new one. It's not A, so let's try B. In B, x is 0 and y is 2. 4 times 0 is 0, plus 3 times 2 is 6. 0 plus 6 is 6, and that's equal to 6. So once again, this is also a solution. That's not our answer. We're looking for the one that's not a solution. So let's move on to C. C is 1. For C, x is 1. Y is negative 2. 4 times 1 is 4. Bring the plus sign down. 3 times negative 2 is negative 6 equals 6. 4 minus 6 is negative 2. And negative 2 is not equal to 6. These are not the same things. So I think that C is my answer. I'm going to go ahead and circle it. Now, I know a lot of you think that this problem is done. However, we have one more potential answer. So I always like to finish that answer, especially since I know it didn't take me that long to do it in the first place. I like to finish off the answer to make sure and prove positively no that that is my answer. So let's go ahead and plug in D. X is 3. Y is negative 2. 4 times 3 is 12. Plus 3 times negative 2 is 6. I'm sorry, negative 6. So 12 minus 6 is 6, and that is equal to 6. So D is also a solution. So I was correct. The correct answer is C, because that's the only ordered pair that does not fit in this equation, and therefore is not a solution. All right, here we have number 5. It says, which set of ordered pairs can be used to graph y equals negative 2, x minus 1? So for this one, we're kind of going to do the same thing we did last time. I'm looking at the answers right here, and I see something very peculiar. If you can... I'm looking at the answers here, and I see something very strange. Not strange, but a coincidence. The first ordered pair in A is negative 5 and 9, and that's also the first ordered pair in D. And the first one in C is negative 2 and negative 5, which is also the same thing in B. So I'm going to start with those two first, because if I know that it's not negative 5 and 9, if they don't equal up to this equation, then I know it's not A or B. Same thing for C and B. So I'm going to go ahead and start with negative 5, the first one in A. Negative 5, x is negative 5, and y is 9. So negative 2 times negative 5 is going to give you positive 10 minus 1 is 9, and 9 is equal to 9. So that is a function. So that can be used. So that means A and D are still possible functions for this. Okay, so let's go ahead and do B and C now, which is negative 2. I just erased the equation, and I shouldn't have. So x minus 1. Now, in B and C, x is negative 2, and y is negative 5. Now remember, if this doesn't work out, I can cross B and C both off. So negative 2 times negative 2 is 4, positive 4, minus 1. 4 minus 1 is 3, and that is not equal to negative 5. So now I know it is definitely not B and it's not C, because they started with negative 2 and negative 5, and those aren't solutions. Okay, so now I know it's A or D. I'm going to look at the next one and hope that they're different, because if they are, then that means I can go ahead and find one. They are different, so let's do it again. We're going to start with A and do the second one in A. The second one in A, x is 1. Y is negative 3. And negative 2 times 1 is negative 2 minus 1. And as you know, negative 2 minus 1 is negative 3. So far, A checks out. A is still right there. So now I'm going to erase this, my x and my y. I'm going to plug in the second one from D, which x is negative 2 and y is 3. So here we go. Negative 2 times negative 2 is 4, positive 4, minus 1, and that is, 9, minus 1, not 3. Minus 1 is 3. So that also is correct. So the second one and each one are correct again. Now, the last one I know are different, because the last one have the same numbers but not the same signs. This one's positive 4 and positive 9. This one's positive 4, negative 9. So all I have to do is do one of them to make sure, to find out which one is the correct answer. I'll write down the equation again. So x is 4. I'm doing A right here. And y is 9. Negative 2 times 4 is negative 8. Minus 1 equals negative 9. And I have a 9 on this side. 9 definitely is not equal to negative 9. So it's not A. I can almost guarantee you that it is D. However, I've told you this a million times, and I'm going to do it here to prove to you that I do it too. I'm going to check to make sure it is. Like I said, it hasn't taken me that long to do this problem, so I'm just going to check. X is 4, and y is negative 9. Negative 2 times 4 is negative 8, minus 1, and that's equal to negative 9. Negative 8 and negative 1 make a negative 9. You have two negatives on both sides. Your correct answer is D. I'm going to be working on number 6, which is one of my favorite problems. I love doing these. It says find the x-intercept and the y-intercept of the graph of x minus 3y equals 2. Now, the reason I like doing this so much is because I hope you guys know this, and I hope I taught you well on this, is that x-intercept and y-intercepts are very easy to find. Remember, whenever you're looking for the x-intercept, you're looking for an ordered pair. Now, of course, we don't know what the ordered pair is for either the x-intercept or the y-intercept. But I can tell you this, even though we don't know what the x is, we do know what y is. Anytime you have the intercept, the intercept you're looking for, the other coordinate is going to be equal to 0. So whenever you're looking for the x-intercept, y will always equal 0. And the same goes for y. The y-intercept, when you're looking for y, you don't know what y is. That's why you're looking for it. And x will always equal 0. So if you know that, then you should know how to solve this. And I'm going to go ahead and write this problem down again so that I can solve both of them. Right over here, I'm going to do the x, and right over here, I'm going to do find the y-intercept. So x-intercept, y-intercept. So I don't know what the x-intercept is, but I do know what y is. Y is 0. And right here I'm doing y. I don't know what y is, but I do know that x is 0. So now that I know that, I just have to solve for x and y, and I get my x and y intercept. So here we go. 3 times 0 is 0. X minus 0 equals 2, which you don't really need that 0. X equals 2. My x-intercept is 2. Okay, now I'm going to solve for y. So I have this 0 minus 3y. I don't really need the 0. All I'm really left with here is negative 3y equals 2. I want the y by itself, but it's attached to 3. I definitely don't want the negative either. So I'm going to divide it by, not by 3, because then I still have the negative. But if I divide it by negative 3, that gives me a positive 1, which just gives me y. And then I divide the same thing by negative 3 over here. So then that gives me y equals negative 2/3. So my x and y-intercept are 2 for x and negative 2/3 for y. So the correct answer is A.